But give Michael Middleton a follow. We've had him on the show before. If you're wondering who specifically is, it was that show that was called, from BTC to BSV, a Satoshi Millionaire's Journey, right? And it was actually one of our biggest shows that we ever had, which was pretty cool. We'll have to get him on here again. But give him a follow. So here he is. And he's been kind of growing out his his X. If you follow that Middleton Mike 62, like it says, he discovered Bitcoin as in BTC in 2013, accumulated Satoshis in 2014, had life-changing NDE on 2/4/20 as Bitcoin implements Genesis upgrade. And now he looks at second chance for everybody is basically BSV. Now, what I want to share with you guys is this. He was featured, all right? And I have gone ahead and fast forward this particular part. This is Patrick Henningsen, okay? He's a geopolitical analyst, journalist, and host of TNT Radio. Huge platform, 162,000 followers. I think he's also part of a few platforms on YouTube. One in particular, that does crypto news, that has close to 2 million subs on YouTube. Real big, well connected, big outfit, right? But they did a really cool collaboration this morning, straight from Acapulco, Mexico, and I think this is cool to see a little bit of the mainstream get shared out there, right? Because let's face it, a lot of people probably even showed up to Acapulco. They've heard of Bitcoin, but they're thinking of BTC. They're not thinking of BSV. So for him to be at this event to educate, for instance, Patrick Henningsen, and have Satoshi also with the collaboration, I thought was big. I won't play the whole thing because it's 47 minutes, but I want you guys to hear this out. This is cool. We're going to share this for a bit, and then we'll get into the BSV outline. BSV is your thing. Thank you for being here. And if anything, like, comment, share the show. We really do appreciate you. All right, here we go.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to 21 Wire Live. We're here at Acapulco 2024, and very pleased to be joined by a couple of special guests. There's a lot of talk about cryptocurrency and what's happening in the Bitcoin space at this amazing event. We've talked about it earlier in some of our earlier interviews as well, and also we're going to be uploading more interviews in the next 2 days of conversations we've had on this and other subjects in the next couple of hours and so forth. So a lot to look forward to in terms of content. But on this live broadcast, there are big things happening in the Bitcoin space, big things happening in the cryptocurrency space that potentially will change the direction of where things are headed now. We're getting into new eras in the story of cryptocurrency and the story of Bitcoin. There's a lot of exciting things happening, but there's a lot of controversial things happening as well. And I'm joined here at the event with Mike Middleton, who is a major observer of the goings on in this part of the technology and the financial space. Mike, welcome to 21 Wire Live.
Patrick, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Always, and to see you.
How's Acapulco been for you so far?
This event this year has been, and I think to almost everyone here, almost like a religious experience, because there's just so many good people, and everyone you talk to is just really on fire for what's happening, not only in the cryptocurrency space, but what's happening in the metaphysical, spiritual realm. It's a great time to be alive. It's hard for me to get the smile off my face because I'm having so much fun.
No, there's a lot of amazing people, amazing things happening here. We've been covering some of it. And one of the subjects that has come up in a lot of conversations here is there is a major legal challenge going on in the Bitcoin world. And the trial with Craig Wright is going on right now. Just preface this. Why is this so significant, Mike?
This is so significant because, and I don't mean to be melodramatic, but it's kind of like the future of humanity. And what I mean by that is if the identity of Satoshi is proven to be Craig Wright, it changes everything. It's a game changer. It changes whether or not he owns all the patents and the things that will allow Bitcoin to flourish in the future as it was originally designed by its creator. And so, like you said, it's a trial that's been going on in the UK. It's been going on for, a little while now, and it's still got a long way to go. And so I'm just glad that we were able to you know, that you're here and making it available. We've got a platform to get the word out and bring some amazing guests on, like what we're going to see here with Mr. Toshi.
So a lot of people are framing this as a kind of, you know, the establishment versus this new insurgent parallel system, economy, society. So you've got COPA, which is an association of, you could say, big tech. I'll let you explain briefly.
Sure.
But it's COPA versus Craig Wright. And Craig Wright, regarded by many as one of the real founding pioneers of Bitcoin.
Right.
There's more of a story to that, of course.
Yes. So COPA is the Crypto Open Patent Alliance, and it's a consortium of almost everyone. It's got all of the major big tech players. It has most, if not all, of the exchanges. You know, it's a whole conglomeration, and they're suing Craig Wright because they want his technology. Let's be simple. That's what they want. And so they want to get it, and they're trying to prove that he's not Satoshi. Now, is he Satoshi? Isn't he Satoshi? I have my own opinions, and a lot of people have their opinions. They like to call him fake Toshi, but I've been following the space here now for a very long time. Spent hundreds of hours personally investigating this, and in my opinion, I think he is. He is, in fact, the creator of Bitcoin. He's the man.
Satoshi Nakamoto.
Satoshi Nakamoto.
The legend, the pseudonym, the myth.
Yes.
That's him. Listen, we'll find out soon enough, or maybe we won't. But you are absolutely, you know, your suspicions or your beliefs are very well grounded, based on the research that you've done, based on your
and I'm going to call it experiential knowledge. I've been into Bitcoin. I know how Bitcoin worked before the forks. I know how it worked after the forks, and I know how BSV is working now.
And what's BSV stand for?
Yeah, that stands for Bitcoin Satoshi's Vision. And on February 4th of 2020, that is when the Genesis protocol, the Genesis upgrade, was restored to Bitcoin in BSV. And just the other day, I sent to a good doctor 1 penny. I did it in 2 seconds, and I paid a fraction of a penny to do so. I mean, that's even better than Bitcoin worked way back in 14 and 15 and 16 when I was doing it. So,
and BSV itself is a coin.
It's the original Bitcoin, and I believe that Bitcoin now, BSV, is doing either on their testnet or live around 2 million transactions a second,
compared to
7 transactions per second on BTC, which and you know, $20 in fees, whatever they're charging now. So you couldn't even think about sending a penny. So, you know, we've gone over this many times, but now the real thing is, and I'm going to preface this whole thing with, it doesn't really matter, in my opinion, whether or not in this trial Craig Wright is proved as Satoshi for 2 reasons. Number one, there's always appellate court decisions that happen afterwards, and I've been involved in those with my own business, so I understand how they work. And also, Bitcoin BSV is already, it's in the wild. It's out there doing its thing. I believe that IBM is developing on Bitcoin BSV right now, as are many others.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, somebody who has been following this trial, this epic trial, is going to be joining us on the line right now. We're going to welcome onto the program Sir Toshi, as he is known on his social media channels. He's joining us right now on the live link. Satoshi, are you there?
I'm indeed. How's it going, gents?
Very well indeed. Thank you for joining us here. We're going to bring you right up onto the stage, front and center here. And Sir Toshi, first of all, frame this trial for us. Where is it? Who's the plaintiff? Who's the defendant? What is the complaint? And where is this at right now? Go ahead. Just put us in the frame on this.
Yeah, great. So we've literally just finished the 2nd week of the trial, and the 2 weeks that have just passed consisted of cross-examination of Craig. And the reason this trial is so important is because it's actually a combination of 3 trials. So initially, Craig was suing the BTC core developers for passing off their SegWit protocol as Bitcoin, when SegWit wasn't in the wasn't in the light paper, replaced by Fee wasn't in the light paper, in the white paper. child pays for parent wasn't in there. Second layer solutions weren't in there. Centrally controlled second layer solutions. All this stuff. Also that centralized through anonymity, because there's now nobody holding those who control the network to account. So it's BTC is now a completely centralized network, and he says, like, look, you cannot list or work on a centralized project using my copyrighted and my intellectual property. So he's suing them for passing off their creation as his creation of Bitcoin. And he's also suing the exchanges for knowingly and willingly participating in this passing off, which was effectively defrauding the customers, because they're buying this restricted 1 megabyte SegWit protocol, thinking that it's Bitcoin when it's nothing like it. They've already said, look, it's a store of value, digital gold. Not many use it. And he's just like, well, if you're not meant to use it, what? So does that mean we're stuck with good old dirty dollar then? Which is obviously what the powers that be want. So that's where they got their funding from. He's just like, look, Bitcoin is a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. It is, in fact, what was so significant about the release of the white paper was that for the first time in history, the white paper actually expressed how to commoditize digital data. In other words, how to give digital data common economic value amongst everybody due to the network that it came from and the abilities that it had, which they've restricted. And so he was suing them. And the judge said, well, because these people that you're suing are they don't want to be sued, and because you haven't proved who you are yet, you're going to have to pay £1.2 million as a security deposit for their costs if you lose. So I'd say like 1.2 million pounds is maybe like 1.6 million US dollars. But when you are the plaintiff, you're the one that has to come forward and provide the evidence. So it's whoever it is that is making the claim. They're the ones that have responsibility of proving that claim. And so that sort of like put the BTC core devs and the exchanges kind of like on the back foot. So then COPA came along, which is the Crypto Open Patent Alliance, made up of all the large corporations that are fully in bed with the central bank in the US dollars. And they were just like, right, well, what we need to do is try and put Craig on his back foot, and we're going to sue him. So we now want clarification from a judge that you are not Satoshi Nakamoto. And so rather than having these three cases run separately, all parties involved have agreed to be bound by the decision in this one court case. And so this one court case is being held in London's High Court. The High Court is a court of equity, so it's a court of contract. It's not a court of criminal law or anything like that. And so really what we're doing is we're trying to establish Satoshi Nakamoto's identity, but obviously identity can only be proved with a package proof, as it were. And all we've heard for the past 2 weeks is about forgery and fraud. And if these claims of forgery and fraud were legitimate, because they are criminal claims, there should be criminal reports and police crime numbers associated with them, but there's not. So that's kind of where we're at the moment.
Okay, check out that in its entirety. Okay, there's like probably 35 more minutes in regards to that. You can watch it on Sirtoshi's channel, right? Type in Sirtoshi, Sirtoshi, right? Also, Michael Middleton has it on his X account, right? Middleton Mike 62, 64, I believe. So yeah, check out either one of them. And I don't know, I think you'd be glad that you did. We are now going to kick it back in the comments because, that was a decently long segment. And then we'll get into the main key thing I want to share with you guys, like you see in the headlines, in regards to, the significance, especially when it comes to IPv6. You know, you heard Cool Cat talk about some of these things many times in the past. I want to give you guys you know, a solid outline in that regard. So, and basically it's like this. If you just tuned in, right? I was talking about this whole thing of like supply and demand. So earlier I was talking about quant with Overledger obviously fixes a TCP IP problem, right? Been there, done that. We already got into it. You can rewind, watch that segment later if you choose to do so. But what about BSV? You know, yeah, BSV. BSV in itself through IPv6. You know, Cool Cat was always talking about IPv6. I remember when you were first talking about IPv6, like summer of 2022, for crying out loud. Like, it's been a while, right? But BSV through IPv6 solves Web3's future scaling problem. Yeah. Well, we talked about why both Quant with Overledger and also BSV technologies, why they're so significant and what stands out for both. Well, we already talked about what stood out for Quant, but what about BSV in regards to, like, you know, IPv6? Great question. In regards to BSV and IPv6, obviously there's a problem, and that problem exists in regards to blockchain scalability problems, not in regards to BSV. So there obviously is tons of blockchain scaling problems with many different blockchains that are out there, both, you know, small and more well known, right? Some of the ones that even have large market caps. You know, I mean, 1,500 TPS compared to millions and billions and trillions of TPS is a huge difference. But blockchain scalability is, in fact, a major concern, as transactions themselves can become congested and expensive as the network grows. Yeah, very true. The current blockchain protocols do, in fact, struggle to handle large volumes of transactions. Now, in regards to what BSV provides as far as the solution to that, right? BSV proposes using the full potential, of course, of the Bitcoin protocol, the original Bitcoin, as envisioned, of course, by Satoshi Nakamoto, or, you know, Dr. Craig Wright, whether people want to agree or disagree with that, right? But this does include increasing block size to accommodate more transactions, similar to how IPv6 addresses limitations of IPv4 in internet addressing. Now, what's the significance in regards to all this? Well, if successful, and I believe it is going to be, because if you've been paying attention to what's going on with Terranode, it's a huge deal, is it not? Like what you saw from Michael Middleton, the case of, hey, he's seen firsthand 2 million TPS. But if successful, BSV could very well offer a highly scalable blockchain platform that can handle not only millions of TPS, but like we mentioned, billions and trillions. This is where I think Michael Saylor just doesn't simply get it. And with that also said, this could pave the way for a wider adoption of blockchain tech for everyday applications. And if anything, this is why so many people are paying attention to this whole COPA case. Like, as the saying goes, you know, these other bigger players that are out there want the technology that resides within BSV. One of the key points I want to point out before we get more into this outline is some of the key points of, you know, each technology. I did talk about quant earlier, so I'm not going to get into that again, but keep in mind, this is BSV. So the focus on scalability, aiming to handle billions and trillions of TPS per second, leveraging, of course, the full potential of the original Bitcoin protocol. If successful, it could very well offer higher scalabilities for the platform, but also equal to wider adoption of this specific technology. Ultimately, each technology, whether it's the Overledger or, for instance, what BSV provides with IPv6, do solve a problem. And with that said, it's the real world problems that exist in the world with blockchain and DLT. What I want to now share with you is a particular video, and this particular one is significant. And like it says on the screen, what is IPv6? What has Cool Cat Crypto been talking about for the last couple years or more, right? So IPv6 in itself, how would it work with Bitcoin SV? Well, that's a great question. We got to get down to the nitty gritty of IPv6. So here's the thing, right? A lot of us currently use IPv4, right? You're plugged into your computer, or some of you guys use laptops, where the case be, right? Like I have, this router that's compatible with IPv6, but IPv6, like, is it really that big of a deal? I think it is. IPv4, if you weren't aware of it, does stand for Internet Protocol version 4. And it's a communication protocol from the 1980s. Again, back to the whole thing we're talking about with the IETF, Internet Engineering Task Force. But this protocol serves as naming network points with 32-bit addresses known as IP addresses. Being a connectionless protocol, IPv4 directs data packets through sequences of these addresses, but does not track the reception. It is therefore known as best effort basis. However, this is not the main issue that exists within the protocol. IPv4 uses 32-bit structure, meaning that there will never be more than 2 by 32 addresses, including a special ones. By January of 2011, which was many years ago, the addresses exhaustion was set in. From there, that there could only be like an option to recycle. Now listen to this part. The event was anticipated, and in the early 1990s, IPv6 was basically deployed. This version of the protocol has 128-bit addresses. So that's a huge, right, uptick. That can size up to 3.4, 10, 8 IP addresses. IPv4 and IPv6 currently coexist but aren't interoperable because of differences in packet structure. Now that's the nerd talk. I could at least follow this even if I was a kid. What I mean by that is, I remember back in the early days of our first video game consoles and so on. What did we have? We had, like, for instance, NES or, Ataris, right? 8-bit. And it was such a big jump to go to Super Nintendo, 16-bit. Everything looked a lot better, right? But again, keep in mind the sizes, the technologies. So you can kind of easily follow this. Huge difference between 128-bit and 32-bit. Now, at the end of the day, IPv6, Bitcoin, SV. Why the need? Why would CoolCat put so much emphasis on it? Well, for one, keep in mind that in the Bitcoin white paper, it is not specified which protocol exactly broadcasts messages, but only mentions of best effort basis. That led back, of course, to IPv4. BTC Node software actually supports IPv6 since the 0.7.0 release. Nonetheless, Bitcoin SV proponent and blockchain researcher, of course, Craig Wright, wants to take the communication protocol a step further. He claims instead of using BTC address, transactions can be made on IP to IP basis. Again, back to the whole thing, what you saw with what Michael Middleton was mentioning. You're only getting like 7 TPS. That's just dinosaur technology compared to, this amazing infinite scalability through BSV for billions and trillions of TPS. But when applying this logic to the Bitcoin protocol, it's obvious how IPv4 would not work for generating destination addresses of what you see right there. It's not enough to cover the population of the world, not to mention generating plenty of addresses is a best practice for security. So if anything, IPv6 is even more secure than v4. There's also network security incentives to use IPv6. The communication protocol comes with IPsec, and an encryption that protocol that secures endpoints and data packets by default. Last but not least, a newer version of the communication protocol can also serve in driving further the narrative of BSV being a standalone. Listen to this. This is the juicy part. Original protocol. The reason it wasn't up for discussion in BTC, and I've always been wondering about this. Have you not been wondering about this as well? The reason is because in BTC is because of an IP to IP transactions were deprecated rather early on. Why BSV wants it and BTC doesn't? That's a great question. I honestly always wonder this. Why wouldn't you want the faster tech? Well, I don't realize it's verbatim, but this is good stuff. A lot of you guys have been wondering about this. When talking about IPv6, Dr. Craig Wright explained this protocol is necessary for peers to negotiate transactions without intermediaries and verify them with miners. In this case, simplified payment verification takes precedence over broadcasting a transaction for miners to validate it. Guys, what happens after the Bitcoin halving? What happens, and we talked about this before, what happens where, what would miners do? And a perfect example is like what they did last time. Say what you want. When Ethereum was still proof of work, it's like people were mining the hell out of ETH. But then Ethereum went to proof of stake. And so these guys, especially with their ASIC miners, it's like that's an investment, right? You want to still get something worth out of that investment, right? This physical miner, you will jump ship to whatever can still produce you something. And a lot of them decided to look into other things. And one in particular, obviously, was Ethereum Classic. And of course, they're not going to make as much, right? We know that. But my thing is this, we're talking about Bitcoin here. What happens with these miners? Do they jump ship and say BSV is the better opportunity? And what would that create as far as supply and demand for this particular asset? Well, again, this is why we mention some of these things. So look at this for a second, okay? In this case, simplified payment verification. I'm just going to double check the time real quick because I'm trying to, keep this not too huge. But simplified payment verification takes precedence over broadcasting a transaction for miners to validate. With SPV nodes work more like a peer-to-peer network than a network with distributed masters. It requires all parties to be online and synced. However, Bitcoin Core opted out of IP to IP transacting for a reason. For one, SPV, as described in Bitcoin SV terms, opens up more concerns for security of transactions. There is no truly trustless way to interact peer-to-peer without a full blockchain history and synchronization with other nodes. Scenarios described by Craig Wright do not seem to account for bad actors. In addition, bypassing verification opens up more space to spam and dust attacks, which Wright dismisses as a feature, not a bug. And I have heard the criticism about this. This is, again, back to the whole thing of what the mass public trusts. Again, guys, we can get into this all day long, but I do like this bottom line, like it mentions. IPv6 proposal, is illustrative of the difference of approaches to the BSV and BTC protocols. On one hand, applying a new version of the internet protocol seems like a reasonable step to modernize a blockchain. On the other hand, ideology seems to have more weight in this proposal than a solution of some actual problems. So is this a case of damned if you do, damned if you don't? I think at the end of the day, we understand one is more trusted compared to the other one. It's more trusted as far as mass adoption, that old dinosaur tech with BTC. But what happens for the future here soon? Some of these big things are happening within the next couple months, are they not? So I think we're all paying attention to what the miner is going to do, and we'll continue to follow it. But for me, I'm going to pick innovation. And why would I do that? Because if anything, history teaches me to do that. You always will bet on the innovators who have emerged and taken things to the next level. If everything in the past is stuck in the past, where those things are, where we speak right now, they have been eaten alive by the competition. I want to jump to this part real quick. This is 8 minutes, and if anything, it'll be perfect time to kind of wrap things up. Talks about restoring the internet's original design, because we're on this topic for a moment, right? This was mentioned a year ago, but it's more valid than it's ever been. Restoring the internet's original design with IPv6 and BSV, a conversation with Dr. Craig S. Wright. He explains in detail why true peer-to-peer communication matters and how BSV and IPv6 allow us to restore the original design of the internet. Again, guys, keep in mind, the core foundation of the internet, like we talked about with IETF, and where we're going for the future. Do you want to embrace dinosaur technology, or do you want to embrace innovation? At the end of the day, that's the decision I think everybody has to make. Where is this thing going? Well, I think it's going to take this to the next level. I'm going to bet on the innovator. Listen to what Craig Wright has to say right here. Here we go.
What we're going through is the process the internet went through in the mid to late 90s. I keep pointing out there was a company called dogfood.com that really had no business but signed up a lot of people, shareholders, all sorts of things for a tokenized economy, and it was bigger than Amazon. Now, that company doesn't exist. It didn't have a business model. Amazon does. So over time, people are going to start realizing that you get a lot of people in early who hype new technology, and they try and make money without doing any real work. Now, the people that we're talking with here, the professors, the people building on the IEEE projects, they're not looking at just getting rich. They're building something over time that matters, something that makes a change through innovation, that enables people to trade, interact, and do things they couldn't do before, opens up new aspects of the world, opens up the ability for people in small villages in the middle of nowhere to actually get on the internet, even if it's the way that it used to work 30 years ago, which is you dial in periodically, check everything, then disconnect. Over time, all of these options are going to start opening up, and we're going to see a world where people can do these sort of communications again. It's really about people building, not people speculating. Basically, Bitcoin was designed to be a peer-to-peer system. Now, that means a direct communication. It doesn't mean this idea people have of mesh, where I send it out and it bounces around for a while and I try and find it, and eventually I locate it on a node. It means that I go up to you and send you a transaction. We negotiate as humans, personally, we trade, we document what we've done, and then we record those entries on the blockchain. Now, this can be extended, of course, not only to people, but protocols can be created for machines. So Internet of Things and the ability to have smart cities, etc. This can allow for machine to machine, person to machine, machine to person, and all sorts of other communications. Where this is important is getting to the original purpose of Bitcoin, which was micropayments. 402 is an error code in HTTP, HTML. So when you're coding a website and you have a HTTP 402 error, what this means is your browser is told that it needs to provide a payment. This payment isn't a credit card, it's a payment via a digital cash exchange. Where the internet was originally designed to go was when someone discovers how to do a proper micropayment system, digital cash, we'll be able to build that into the foundations of the internet to send individual tokens, individual payment options that will instantly allow you to access those sites for the required amount of money and payment. So IPv6 allows that. It allows direct communication. Already, people don't realize, but about somewhere between 55 to 60% of the internet has already moved over IPv6. Over time, that'll be even more. With v6, you don't require NAT or gateways, and the direct ability to communicate between individuals allows you to have that level of exchange and trustworthy monetary interactions. You can now say this IP address cryptographically assigned to this user relates to this transaction. First of all, the optional components that were there as a major part of IPv6, which is IPsec, can be built in directly. So you can directly have VPN-style communications instantly set up without having to pay providers, gateways, etc. The complexity of that can be very low so that anyone can do it without having to worry. And on top of this, the comment that I just made about 402, the error returned in HTTP, is that you can integrate that with payment gateways, etc. So when I connect to a website, I'm in a different country, roaming, etc., I can instantly now bring up a payment, jump providers without having to go and find new SIMs or anything like this. I could now pay for my internet access as I go, either for a large block of data at 1 gig or by the kilobyte if I wish. Now, that isn't necessary, as you say. We could remain on a system where a few people who are the middle class and wealthy in the world have direct access because, well, they can use credit cards and banks. Or we could open up something that is simple, easy, allows anyone, anywhere in the world to interact and jump on the network for fractions of a cent when they can afford it. IP to IP is a direct communication between either machines or individuals. It means there's no middleman. And this is how the exchanges in a monetary system such as Bitcoin can scale. If I'm going through a node network directly and I have to search that network, the added complexity makes it unscalable. This is why people talk about keeping the block size low. Now, that is purely about anonymity. They want to make it so that no direct communications, no records happen. But that's not how people trade. That's not how negotiations occur. You don't go out to a random person, start going, can I trust you? I'm going to send you money. Will you send me the goods? The reality is far different than that. Now, the argument was, oh, there were reputation systems in Silk Road. Really? As an example, there were a group of school kids who bought ecstasy that was tainted with phenytoin. This is one of the Silk Road cases. 3 kids died. This was in America. Now, those kids have been using Silk Road. Do you think after their death that their parents are going to go on and go, don't trust this dealer? Sorry, it doesn't work that way. You can't have a reputation system that's anonymous. You don't know which people are real or fake. If you don't have real identities, then they're just bots, they're sybils. So for people to trade, negotiate, and build a system where they can trust each other, they need to be able to have interactions, not randomly, but with other people. It's going to be cheaper and easier. So if you can now get on and transmit based on the individual packets you're sending and pay for those with the end gateway units directly, you're not going to have SIM plans or anything like this for each device. You're going to be able to automate the entire infrastructure, setting it all up so that now what you can do is effectively monitor the entire transaction process, buying and selling the bits of information you need on each device, paying for it remotely, being able to monitor all of your devices remotely, setting up wallets that pay for all of them, monitor ones that are costing too much and fix that, etc. So by monetizing this, by adding economics into the process, we start people measuring and making everything better, even on 5G and IoT devices. But I'd love to see a bit more people build and create applications, not so they can gamble or speculate on price, but by actually building something that earns money. So if every transaction they get 1 cent, build something that has millions of transactions every day and you're still going to make a lot of money. And you're not going to care that the price goes up or down. You're going to care how much you make per transaction. And if you can do that, then you build a sustainable industry.
Wow, how cool was that? You know, sustainable industry and recognizing the greater, bigger picture of the things. So I thought I'd give you guys some illustrations, some, detailed research, because IPv6 has been something that's been brought up for the longest time. And I thought, I've never looked more deeper into it and did a proper outline. So shout out to Cool Cat Crypto. Mentioned the whole thing of IPv6 for at least a couple years that I know of.